Danny, you have the pre-recorded one for Dean's paper.
Yep, I've got it here. Can everyone see it?
Yes.
Yeah, probably we can start with that.
Beautiful.
I can't hear it.
It was actually done by Joseph Kashiwagi. I'm actually presenting a PhD thesis on the sustainability of the best value approach in an organization. It was actually done by Joseph Kashiwagi. He's not here. I'm presenting his thesis results today. Well, of course, the best value approach was created because project management has been so, quote, inefficient and ineffective over many, many years. And anywhere you look, you can find failed projects. Anything in infrastructure is a failed project. And so at the Performance-Based Studies Research Group, we developed the best value approach, which eliminated all these problems. It became the most licensed technology created at Arizona State University. Well, what were the results of the best value approach? They could minimize the procurement cost by 50%. They could minimize the cost of the project anywhere from 5 to 30%. 98% of the time, the customers are satisfied. And the process actually minimized risk created by vendors to 1%. And of course, the client's project managers were able to minimize their effort by 90%. And the question that arose is, with these results, why was this approach so difficult to sustain? That was the research question. Why couldn't organizations utilize the best value approach? And so basically, he took the traditional approach, reviewed literature, surveyed all the users of the best value approach, did case studies that the organization was working on, analyzed the data, worked in focus groups, talking to people, coming up with the answer on how to create documentation and, quote, instructions that would help sustain the best value approach. In the literature review, you can immediately see what's going on. When the best value approach is to minimize communication, collaboration, the passing of technical details, that is in the wheelhouse of what most organizations do. And you can go right down the left side, look at the right side, and begin to realize that in order to successfully implement the best value approach, there needs to be a change of paradigm. The surveys identified the same thing. Looking at the major problems, it's the problems of organizations. It's what project managers traditionally do. Looking at the projects that this organization was running, utilizing this approach, you can see the same thing. So what Joseph did in his thesis, after collecting all the information, talking to all the participants, he then went and created documentation for that international organization so that when anyone wanted to implement the best value approach, they would just go to the documentation, which was on their website, and it would walk them through step by step on what to do. Wow. What was the research conclusion? Well, the research conclusion was, if you have a better understanding of the best value approach, it's going to go better. But basically, problems that were identified that were stopping the organization showed that you needed a documented process. So they did the documented process and put it on their website. So everyone now in the purchasing group of this large international organization could now successfully implement the best value approach. Well, we're looking at this. Not only Joseph's looking at, Joseph's doing his PhD, but the practitioners are looking at this thing, and we're seeing something go on. And we had kind of got like an intuitive feeling of what was going on. But it's so like different. And it's so hard to explain to traditional people. But what was going on was, we finally, after all the documentation was done, it's put on the website for this organization. Everybody agrees it makes it easier to sustain. It didn't have the impact that we thought it would have. And the reason why it didn't have the impact, we now went back into the logic of information measurement theory, and we began to realize if people have to read, if people have to think about it, if people are starting to make decisions, it doesn't matter how much documentation you have, they will bastardize and not run the true process. And so we finally realized we have to simplify, make it so simple that people don't have to read and don't have to think. It's by instinct and simplicity that the best value approach can actually be successfully run. And so this is going to take the next couple of years. We're now tracking some of the projects, and if any of you have any questions on this, there'll be a time for Q&A, and you can get back to us. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Dean, for the excellent paper. May I ask, is there any questions from the floor? If there's no question, then shall I ask a question to Dean? Dean, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, Dean. For the best value approach, I have attended a number of your presentations. It's always very impressive and interesting. Now I just wonder, have your study, your team of study looking at the big data and the best value approach, making use of big data for the best value approach? Do you think that is possible?
What do you consider big data?
Because I understand that for the for the best value approach, you will use some of the metrics like the KPI. But for the KPI, there is a selective measurement. If you can use big data, that means you can collect more data. So will it be better for the best value approach? I don't know. I'm asking you, for your opinion on this.
Well, the people responsible for the performance metrics in their proposal is the vendor. If they have additional data that proves their point, they can use it. However, the performance metrics that they use does not need big data. If there's no thinking or decision-making going on by the client's representatives, then the performance metric should be the most simplistic and close to the requirement that's required. And so this year, and it happened too late, but we got signed on for a contract with a organization called NEOM, which is a fully automated city in Saudi Arabia. That's their end goal. We're actually going to semi-automate the best value approach itself so that the procurement agent or the representative of the client will respond to the computer and will not do anything except if the computer asks him to do something. And the problem is not anything to do with too little data. It's got everything to do with the thinking and decision-making of the client's representatives. So once that is shut down, then it works beautifully. This is a vendor-centric approach. This is not client-centric. It does not require client thinking or decision-making. And we have found out that it's these folks, the stakeholders representing normally the client, who cause over 90% of all problems. So it's actually rather simplistic, but people won't believe it until they actually see it, because it's so different from the traditional approach.
Okay, thank you very much, Dean, for your clarifications. We are learning from you.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you. We still have a couple of minutes for the first speaker. Is there any further question on the floor? If no questions, so can I proceed to the next speaker? Now, before the next speaker is supposed to be Normu sir. Can I check, is Arun Buku on the line now, the first speaker, or the co-author for the first paper? Is it on the line? Okay, if no, then we'll proceed with the third speaker on the list. That is Normu sir. Normu sir, are you ready?
Good afternoon. I am ready.
Okay. Good afternoon. Normu sir, can you introduce yourself? Then you can proceed with the presentation straight away. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I am Nomusa Makatini, a PhD candidate at University of Johannesburg. I would be presenting a paper called Utilization of Remote Monitoring System to Improve the Management of Multiple Projects in Construction. I will share my presentation. Okay, just having. Okay, just a minute. I'm trying to share my presentation and can you see the presentation?
Haven't at the moment. I think it's coming up.
nothing is it. Is it possible if I were to share with Danny? I'm not sure if Danny has it because I've shared my presentation and I present from his end.
Yeah, Danny, can you help?
Have you clicked that share button at the very top right-hand corner?
Yes, I have.
And after that, are you clicking screen or window?
I'm going screen, but it still doesn't pop up.
Okay. You might. Okay. Let me just have a look. What I'll get you to do is, can you try leaving the call and just coming back and seeing if it comes back?
Okay, thank you.
All right, Amo, so can you see the share button now? It's working.
It's working. Open, close. It's working, but now it's no longer even deactivating. Maybe there's something wrong with my machine. Is
Okay.
there a way of emailing you my presentation?
Yeah, I could definitely do that. Just yeah, I'll probably need you to let me know when to hit the next slide. But if you just send it to me via Teams, I'll shoot you a little
Okay.
message, and you can drag and drop it into the Teams chat, and I'll share it on my side here.
Okay. Show on the side. Okay, thank you. Apologies for this. Okay. I just need to drop it on the chat.
Yeah, can you try drop it into the chat to see if that'll send through? If you can't, I can give you my email address and you can email it to me as well, because I don't think the chat's working for Teams.
It's not working. When I drop it, doesn't take it. Your email address, please drop it on the chat.
Yeah, I've just done that now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Once I have it open, I'll share it up. So just give me a moment.
Oh, okay. Do we have a presentation on a video record in the meantime? While we wait.
Or you can email it to anyone.
Okay, it's making me panic now.
Yep, I'm just waiting with my inbox at the moment. Don't seem to see the email. You've sent it now, right?
Yes, it has no subject. I'm really sorry for that. Did you receive anything?
Not yet.
Still nothing, Danny, from your side?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have nothing in my inbox yet.
Okay, I'm resending again. I'm so sorry.
Actually, you seem to be muted at the moment.
Yes. It left my outbox the second time again.
We can go ahead and run the next presentation, which is already uploaded and filmed, Dr. Chia. And then come back to this presentation if we can get the presentation transferred. I don't think we should wait because the time is going to be gone.
I've got it now.
Oh, okay. Whoa.
All right, Namusa, you ready?
Thank you so much for the patience. So my paper is utilization of remote monitoring systems into improving management of multiple projects in construction. The paper was co-authored with the university professor Innocent Musonda. Multiple projects, they are faced with many challenges, as well as we face with, you can move to the next slide. Sorry. Please. So the paper was focusing on the challenges that remote monitoring system, as well as how multiple projects could be aided by a remote monitoring system. Consider that remote monitoring system, they face a lot of challenges in terms of managing the stakeholder, the cross-functional communication that happens there, and also you always have to detect your problems early in the project. And then these challenges in most cases are influenced by managing projects through one single project managers, because at a certain level, there's a limited number that one project manager can be effective in a project. So multiple projects require a lot of information in an instant, and there's a lot of future risk that needs to be looked at when you run multiple projects. And this is due that they share knowledge as well as the resources. So we looked at the available remote monitoring system, and through years they have evolved. We've got cameras, we've got static virtual models that could assist on monitoring the day-to-day activities on site, and then it also helps the project manager to track the projects. The aim of the research was to identify the key challenges. Next slide. The key challenges that project managers face when they run project managers, and then to see as well how the adopting the remote monitoring system could help to actually mitigate those projects. So the study also explored the available remote monitoring system and how each tool or a system could aid on the identified challenges. However, the study was limited to one consulting company that runs multiple projects, and they use two different styles of monitoring. One is called traditional, where they just don't have any tools, and the other one is remote monitoring. They apply different tools to monitor their multiple projects. Next slide. So here, how the data was collected, a questionnaire was created for the project managers that manage a project with using these two different style, and the questionnaire was generic. It only required project managers that are running running multiple projects in a construction industry. Next slide. So how the question name was sectioned, it had 5 stages, which it was project information, multiple project challenges, and the applied remote monitoring system, as well as the performance of single projects and the performance of the project under one project manager. So for project information, it was just generic questions to check how many projects each project manager does at the same time, as well as their complexity. And the second one was just to identify the challenges were identified through literature review, and then they were listed as part of the questionnaire just to see how the project managers rank them and relate into those challenges. And then also we had a list of the remote monitoring systems that were listed just to see if project managers are using them and which ones are they using on the or on their project. And then we also looked at the project's performance. It was mainly based on quality, cost, as well as timelines, and also as a whole bucket now under one project manager. How did all of those projects perform? The next slide. So the results, the first result, so here it was just to check how many people are running multiple projects. I used the Likert scale, always was number 5 and never it's 0. So to see how many projects each project manager did, and most of the project managers, they sit between 5 and 6, which was above the weighted mean. That confirmed that with the information and the data that I was working with, it was coming from people that ran project managers, multiple projects. Next slide. So the listed are the challenges that were identified through literature review. It was project management processes, competency of a project manager, project management. All the 10 were the ones that kept on coming as I was going through literature as the biggest challenges that actually affect the performance of the project managers. We can move to the next. On the challenges, what I've done through the questionnaire, I asked the respondent to actually rank what are the challenges that they faced. So comparing to the remote monitor, to the traditional versus the remote monitoring system, a lot of projects, they would struggle to be on the same progression. And then while on the remote monitoring system, it wasn't their first issue, but it was also like a second challenge. And then also in terms of delays, as well as the challenges that were listed on the previous slide, a lot of traditional monitoring system, they had their projects being challenged by delays. When you compare to remote monitoring systems, there wasn't any issues in terms of delays, even though in terms of like safety and quality issues, they were still around the same time. However, on the remote monitoring system, what I noted was that they had a lot of contractual claims, even though they had remote monitoring systems. We can move to the next slide. This one was on the project value. Where I checked what type of project in terms of value each project managers are managing, which 1 to 2 was 1 to 2 million rands, and then up to, oh no, excuse me, I'm fast forward. So this one was the number of projects that each project manager would do at the time. On the remote monitoring system, they had more than 5 projects at once, while on the other side, they were running 1 or 3 projects. And then multiple project manager was the remote monitoring projects, they were running up to 9 projects sometimes at one, done by one project manager. We can move to the next. This one is the project value. So on this project value, we looked at the projects that are managed by one project manager and to see how is the value of the project. So it was between 6 to 10 million. On the traditional, that's where a lot of projects set, as well as their biggest chunk was also sitting on projects between 10 million to 20 million. That's where remote monitored projects were. And then on traditional, they also ran a lot of projects that were between 60 million rands to 200 million rands. So with this one, it raised the question that are the remote monitoring projects maybe performing better because it's more valued projects, while the remote monitoring projects, it is they running more projects that are of a higher value. There was an observation on this one. We can move to the next. So this was done to check performance in terms of adequate time that a project manager spend on site, and do they always have information available? What are the safety issues? Just to compare the two management styles. In most cases, you would see with the remote monitoring remote monitoring projects, they had a lot of efficiency in terms of getting information, and their communication was doing well, even though they were lower on quality and a bit of time was spent traveling, while the traditional ones, they spend a lot of time traveling and in their information and sharing information and the controls on site, they were really performing way lesser than what the remote monitored projects were. Next slide. So the discussion comparing the two sub cases, it's out there. The traditional monitored projects, they had challenges to control their projects, and most of their projects were prone into delay compared to the performance of the remote monitored one. And then there was also a lot of client complaints, obviously due to delays on the project. So with this, for me, it showed that the traditional ways of monitoring projects, they still have a lot of insufficiencies that needs to be looked at. Next slide. On the remote monitoring system, in terms of their project performance, their control was more better than how the traditional ones. And then at the same time, their project managers, they managed to be not on site, but be able to monitor different projects at the same time. And in this, I think it's based on having remote monitoring systems that aid the project managers while they are far from their projects. The final slide. So the recommendation that I would make from what I've gone through the study was firstly on the relationship between the project value. It was very clear that the traditional ones, they run projects of a higher value, while the remote monitored one, it's of a lesser project value. So I would like maybe the next person, or probably myself in the next future, to explore if there is any relation between on performance when the projects are of a lower cost and running them in numbers. And then the other one, it's obviously the cost implication in terms of the project performance. You might apply a remote monitoring system, but you find out that the benefit at the end is too costly and it doesn't work out. Maybe for stakeholders, when they invest on projects, to see if is it a feasible exercise to deploy a remote monitoring system, or they can manage in a traditional way. So there will be the future studies that I would like to be taken on this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Nomusa. Now, may I ask, is there any question from the floor? Anyone? If you have question, either you turn on your mic or you can type on the chat thing for your questions. Now, while we are waiting for the rest, Norman sir, may I ask you questions?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yes. In your slide, one of the slide, I do notice that you have the result shows that remote monitoring causing the project prone to contractual claims. Contractual claim is number one issue or number one challenges. So do you have any explanation why the remote monitoring will cause more contractual claims?
Obviously, it would be an assumption because it was a blank question from getting that information and analyzing data. But as we were going through, it was an assumption to say maybe because the remote monitoring systems, they always are aware of what is happening on site, so it's easy for them to quickly pick issues with the contractors and put up the data. And probably it's something that I could explore into detail, but that was the only assumption I made from that blank data that wasn't explained from the respondents.
I see. So do you think that as the technology are advancing, so probably we will have equipment or tools which can have higher precisions when you take the what you call, when you take the shot, the photo from the site or whatever, or during the transferring of information, it can be go faster, etc. Then the contractual claims, the issue of contractual claims should be reduced with the more advancement of a technology. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do agree.
Okay, thank you, Nomusa. Any more questions from the floor? If there's a none, Jacob, you will be presenting the your presentation is in the recorded video, right?
It is.
Danny, you
Hello,
can go ahead.
my name is.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jacob Kashwagi. I am a senior researcher for the Performance-Based Studies Research Group, and I will be presenting the paper, The Application of the Best Value Approach in Purchasing Card Services. This research was started and initiated by a state government in the US. It was experiencing some issues, and some of the issues you can see on the screen. It was finding that as they were trying to procure services, they weren't able to attract as many bidders as they wanted. Not only that, is oftentimes when they would try to award a project, they would get protests from the different vendors. And of course, it would take them a very long time to develop requirements to procure the service with. And so they're trying to find a system that could make this more efficient and could attract more vendors that were high performing to bid on their services. And so they saw, the head procurement person saw one of the performance-based studies research group's presentations, saw what we were doing, and wanted to test the best value approach on a service for their state. And you can see the performance of the best value approach on the screen. Now, one of the main things with the best value approach from the traditional models that most states and governments use is shown on the industry structure, where you have perceived competition on the x-axis and performance on the y. So everyone wants high competition, so we're looking at the right-hand side of the chart. But many are stuck in the price-based quadrant, which the difference between the price-based and the best value, the higher performing quadrant, is that in the lower quadrant, the client manages, directs, and controls. How this works is the client usually creates a minimum standards or a requirement for a project. Of course, these are technical and complex, and since the client is not an expert in all their services, it's a little confusing. And so as they go out, the belief is, as long as you can meet this minimum standard, all the vendors are the same. And so the usual traditional procurement process cannot differentiate between vendors. They believe they're all the same. They believe all of their people are the same. Hence, because the client is telling the vendor what to do, and all the vendors can assumingly understand what the client wants, all you have to do is look for the lowest cost. And so this is usually how things work. The best value approach changes this to make the client utilize the expertise of the expert vendor instead. Hence, instead of trying to think all the vendors are the same, we're going to find out which vendor is the highest performing, differentiate which ones can do the project and how well they can do it, and then allow them to take the project over and tell us what to do. The big changes with the best value approach is, one, it simplifies. So it eliminates the technical information and requires everyone to talk in simplistic performance metrics. It minimizes the effort of both the client and also the vendors. It minimizes the decision-making of the client because it requires the vendors to make those decisions. And it requires the vendors to differentiate themselves. So when you look at the state's traditional process versus the best value approach process, you can kind of see the difference in terms of how long it takes to develop the RFP. It's much shorter. The time for the vendor to submit their proposals are very much shorter because it doesn't require the vendors to turn in as much information. The proposals are shorter, it allows the evaluation to be quicker and less effort on the client. And then, of course, the vendor contract, instead of a negotiation, it's one where the vendor is actually clarifying and laying out a plan so the client can understand what they will do. So let's go into the test project. The project requirement was for a purchasing card. Every state has credit cards that they use to purchase things and to buy things off of, and so they need to hire a bank to help them out with this. Fortunately for these type of services, the bank actually pays a rebate to the customer for letting them be able to do the service for them. And so the main objective was the state wanted a very high rebate where the bank was giving them back money. They listed exactly what was currently happening and how big their state government was that was using the purchasing cards. And then they went through the best value approach. And you can see in this approach, they go through a preparation, which is developing the RFP, a selection, which is basically telling the vendors, look, without using technical information, turn in these requirements and differentiate yourselves with performance metrics in terms of your expertise, how you're going to minimize risk, your value, and then, of course, your project manager that can show us exactly what their performance is and how they're going to do this in a very simple manner. And then, of course, the price. While we went through this process, actually, one of the vendors identified in the interview how they never bid on this RFP before, but they decided to do it now because it seemed that this new process was right along the ways that this company dealt with their clients in how they wanted to deliver services, which was a very good information for the client to know. This is how it worked. The top matrix is the raw scores. Everyone got a 1 to 10 rating on each of their documents. The rebate got a score in terms of their points. And then they normalized it and they times it by the weighting of each. And this is how you get their different scores. As you can see, the first two vendors were very close. But when they looked at it, one vendor, be it Bank of America, gave them a much better rebate, and they had perfect scores in their performance. And so it was no decision for them. They brought them in. And the selection conclusion was that there was a high-level competition. They had the most vendors bid on the service that they ever had. They prioritized a very high-performing vendor, and it was a unanimous decision from the client to bring them in. Here are the final results that you can see. The time to procure was actually half of what it usually takes. The rebate amount was almost double, and they had 6 bidders compared to the previous time of 1 bidder. And everything was tracked and documented, which was amazing to the state. The state actually went and recommended this process to other entities within the state as well. And that was a service that they found. They found out that in doing a more best value approach type of project delivery model, that they could deliver quicker, they could procure a vendor that was higher performing and could get more money back to the state. If you have any questions, I will be around. Thank you so much. You have a great day.
Thank you, Jacob. Is there any question from the floor? We still have a few minutes to go. Now, if there's no question from others, I have questions, Jacob. I think, can you hear me, Jacob?
I can.
Okay. I think just now in your presentation, probably in the slide number 10, there's a process, you call it normalize. I just didn't get it clearly. How do you doing the normalize of the data?
So the normalization of the data is basically so that we can give everyone competing a percentage from 100% to 0%, so that we can find out how many points they should be allotted. And so normalization is basically just taking every number and dividing it by the best score. So it becomes a percentage of total possible points they could get.
Okay, what you mean is you get the score and divided by the best score.
Yes, so then you have the vendor with the best score gets 100% of the points.
Yeah.
And everybody else will get a percentage depending upon how close they are to the best score.
Yeah, okay, understood. Thank you.
That makes sense.
Thank you. So is there any more question from the others on the floor? If no, then we will conclude these sections. Thank you for all the speakers, and thank you for Danny. Thank you. We'll see you in the next sections.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.